Hey, this is Chad with Dad Rolls Initiative. This channel is built all around D&D, dungeon mastering, and doing it for your kids, and really kind of the very beginnings of that. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, definitely subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment below, let us know other things that you'd be interested in knowing. But that's essentially what you're gonna get here on this channel. Now, for today's episode, what we were looking at is kind of what our first D&D session looked like and why some of that stuff occurred. As you know, if you've seen the previous video, the way that we got started with D&D was just kind of randomly during Christmas vacation, picked up the D&D starter set, Heroes on the Borderlands, and went home, ripped open the box, and tried to jump right into it super fast. I would not advise that being the way you go about doing it, and I'll tell you a few reasons why. So first off, the box has essentially everything that you need. It's fantastic. It's got the characters in there, or at least kind of character sheets sort of pre-drawn out for you, super quick cards that you can go, all sorts of like coins and tokens and things that you can punch out of cards. So you have kind of a tangible item for everything that you're going to run across in there, from your monsters to your NPCs to any monetary value, any weapons you're going to have. All of that stuff is analog. So there's actually something you can touch and hand to somebody, which makes the game just a little bit easier to understand. There's very little imaginary stuff that's going on in there. The other thing that it has is really clear and concise booklets to go through with kind of pre-arranged adventures, which is exactly what I was expecting. So we ripped open this box, we got all our stuff punched out, and there's a few things that we learned as we were doing this, and I'm gonna talk to you about this. First off, timelines were a lot longer than what I was expecting. Again, I bought this almost the way that you would buy a board game, and brought it home and expected to just be able to throw it up on the table in 15, 30 minutes and be playing. And that is not how it worked out at all. I would say bare minimum, it probably took us about 30 minutes just to get all the stuff punched out, get to everything kind of sorted and arranged. And then we had to start learning how to do this and figuring out the characters and all that sort of stuff. So we were probably going at it for an hour before we even got to start playing D&D. And even that was really, really rough because I didn't do any of the back work or the front end work prior to getting the kids involved. So my first suggestion would be to start reading through the stuff that they give you. So they do a great job because they take what essentially is in all three of these massive players and dungeon masters and monster manuals and all that sort of stuff, which your game is kind of centered around, and they distill it down to this, right? So you've got, I don't know, call it 30 pages. Yeah, 30 pages or so of the rules and how the game's supposed to work, right? So all of those manuals down to this. But I didn't read this. I just started going. This would help you out immensely. So if you pick this game up on like a Wednesday and you're planning on playing on the weekend and you just thumb through this first before you get the kids involved, you're gonna be way ahead of where I was. So this is everything you need to know to run combat, to understand the NPCs. It's got a couple of printouts of what the dynamic of the conversation should look like, kind of between the dungeon master and the players, and what they ask to do, and the questions that you ask them to get them to do something. All of that stuff is in here. I didn't have any of it. I just started. And I'll tell you that that was a much quicker way to get in, but I was also kind of a little bit hasty about it. But the adventures are written out in such a way that you can do it. It's possible. They take you into adventures, and let me show you just real quickly one of the first ones we started with. So we started with the trail adventure, and it looks like this, and you'll see all these different boxes in here, and they explain to you what all these different boxes are. A lot of the information is for the dungeon master, and a little bit of it is things that you say to the player. Now, this is the second thing that we noticed, is that out of these 2 pages of an adventure that is supposed to go, half hour type of thing like that, 2 to 4 pages of these adventures, there's maybe 6 lines that you are actually saying to your players, right? There's 6 things that you're saying, whether that's kind of setting up your setting or describing the NPC that they're meeting or giving them some clue or hint about what's supposed to be going on in this adventure. There's very little of that in there. which is intentional, right? It's intentional because what you want to have happen is a back and forth. What you want to have happen is kind of constructing this adventure as you go, where the players are a part of that conversation. So they don't want to give you too much. But again, as a brand new DM, what I found was I was running these adventures in 10 minutes because the boys, who are very young, inexperienced, and don't really know what we're doing here, and me being inexperienced and much older, we were just reading this stuff back and forth to each other, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't understand what sort of latitude they had to affect the game or to change things or to ask questions. And I didn't know enough to lead them in those directions or to prompt those type of questions because I had just started. So I was going through these adventures, just ripping through them because there's 10 lines that I have for them, and they would just go, yes, okay, I guess we go, and things like that. So it was really stilted. It was super fast, and it didn't really have a whole lot of dynamic nature to it, the way that you'd expect a typical D&D game to go to. It was because of my poor planning. It was because of my extraordinarily poor execution. It was because I didn't lean into the idea of kind of improving this or building out from what I was given. I had absolutely I had no spice in my game whatsoever. I was pure vanilla. Flour on the table, that's it. It was as bland as could possibly be, exactly the words as written and nothing more. So if you're going to do this, my suggestion would be to, one, be prepared, read through the adventure well, and then kind of understand a little bit more about the environment that you're trying to cultivate there. You know, when they tell you you're walking down a path, well, put yourself in that place. Like, what is on that path? What does it look like on the side? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it dark? Is it light? And they give you some of that information, but build on it a little bit and expand on it. And if you want your players to go into that cave, put something there that interests them or that excites them, or some sort of hook that kind of leads them in that direction, so they don't feel as though they're plopped down in this world with no notion of what's happening or why they're doing anything, because I just wasn't filling the gaps for them. And again, I would argue that maybe as older players and people that can kind of feel what this game is supposed to be a little bit better, maybe that's not necessary. But with young players, I think it's really important to guide them initially into what you want to see happen, and show them that there's some room to move in here, and there's some things that they can do that they might not otherwise expect, and see if you can start that conversation, because I think that will help out significantly. So those are the first two things that I noticed in our first game. Those were things that were really apparent pretty quickly. We kind of felt this slog that we were in. And even when it came to combat, it was super prearranged. It was kind of like I put them in the right order, and then it was just like, okay, roll your dice. You hit, let's get damage. Here's the damage. He goes, what's your dice? Roll damage. And see, and it went like that, but there was nothing to explain what was happening or what that looked like or how it felt or what's going on in that scene, so to speak. It was just very calculated, and almost like we were just working on a piece of paper and just sketching out what death looks like. It was not great. Now, the saving grace of this, and the thing that I think was really the last thing that I noticed that was maybe the best thing, was that none of it mattered. The boys had a great time. They were having a ton of fun. I had this expectation for what I wanted this game to look like and what I wanted it to feel like, and it was things that I had seen on TV or heard about in movies or from other people's games or from the way my cousin's stuff went when we were, 40 years ago or 30 years ago. And instead, what I needed to be concentrating on was my players across the table from me, my two boys, and whether or not they were having fun. And they were. And even though I wasn't doing a good job, even though I wasn't prepared, even though it took way longer than anybody expected, they enjoyed it. And they enjoyed it so much that they were asking questions about how we could do it again and what was the next thing, and like, what does my character know, and can I get this type of weapon? And you could tell there was genuine interest in expanding the world, as black and white and tiny as it was when we initially started. They wanted to expand that world. They wanted to know more about it. They wanted to read other things to cultivate more interest in this and kind of get more ensconced and deeper into this thing. And it was amazing. Because again, often, at least with my boys, when the first take of something isn't good, they'll lose interest. They'll just get bored of it, or it's too challenging, or it's too dull, or whatever that thing is. If it's not engaging right off the bat, it's gone. But for some reason, and maybe because the engagement is a little bit the creativity, the interaction, and something new, they were all in right off the bat, even though it was a terrible product from me, not the product itself. The product itself is fantastic. I just didn't use it right. But the first iteration of our D&D session was awful, but they enjoyed it, and that brought them in deeper. So I guess to put a bow on this, if you're considering this, if you're thinking about doing it, but you're kind of worried about whether or not you're going to do it properly, there's preparation that you could do. Absolutely. Read those guides, go through the play guide, go through the adventure itself, understand where some of your cards are and the things that you're going to need during the course of the session. Great. Have that preloaded and ready to go so that you can kind of be Johnny on the spot when that moment comes. But also know it may not matter. You could run a terrible session. I did it. You could run a terrible session and still have the kids interested. They could still be excited about what's going to happen next and getting deeper into it and wanting to know what that next adventure looks like. And I would argue it has a little bit of something to do with kind of our innate desire to be a part of something heroic and new, and to explore and to stretch boundaries that we aren't even fully aware exist out there yet. There's a pull in this direction to do something different and exciting and unknown. And this game has that. Whether you run it well or poorly, it has that. And it's a part of it. It's just built in. And I think the more that you can capitalize that and use that, great. But the only way to really do that is to get started. So if you have that starter set, if you're interested in that starter set, do it. Drop the coin, find it. I left a link down below to where you can get it from Amazon. I think it's always there. It's just they've got 1 billion of them ready to go because they know that people are picking these up and riding with them. Give yourself a couple of days to get involved before you bring the kids in, and it'll change your experience significantly. My subsequent sessions where I did a little bit of preparation for session 2, 3, 4, 6 now, I think, were so much further ahead and better able to run that session properly. That's my one piece of advice. Just get a little bit of prep under your belt, but ultimately get started. Just do it. If you've had an experience like this, or if you have any questions about what this is like, being a brand new DM and just kind of figuring it out and stumbling your way through it, definitely leave a comment below. I'm going to try to answer everything that comes my way. I'm also planning on shooting a lot of videos about what these beginning stages will look like. Again, if you watched the previous video, you know that from this moment, from that first game, I bought everything I could. And I'm going to go through a lot of that stuff because some of it's been great and some of it has not been awesome. And has been not a waste, but maybe way too much too soon. I think if 10 years down the road, this would be really awesome if I become a great DM, but right now, almost completely useless to me because it's way outside of my scope and my capability. But we'll talk about all those things. So again, thank you very much for watching. I know that I've kind of rambled on a little bit, but I'm super excited about this. I'm super excited about where these sessions are going and how interested my kids are in this and how well they are interacting and corresponding to what the game wants to do as I'm growing as a DM and as they're growing as players. It's getting better and better every time we sit down at the table. Well, except for the last game, but we'll talk about that in another video also. So again, thank you for tuning in. If you like this sort of content, want to find out more about being a beginning dungeon master, especially for your kids, kind of understand what the beginnings of Dungeons & Dragons looks like as you're playing or DMing right at the start, definitely subscribe to this channel. We'll be putting out more videos like this, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.